So yeah, thank you both for the invitation. I'm excited to share with you what we've been doing at bioRxiv and medRxiv to help with making science dissemination more open and transparent. So I'd first like to start with what preprints are and why they're so important. But before I do, I want to just give a little bit of background about the traditional journal publication process and why that was a motivator for the launch and the adoption of preprints and preprint servers. So, as I'm sure you're all aware, when you do scientific research, you write up your scientific manuscript and then submit that to your first choice journal. And what is often, unfortunately, the case, that manuscript is not necessarily accepted for publication in that first journal. And so then what scientists go through is a series of revisions and subsequent submissions to various journals. The manuscript goes through peer review at each of those journals and then eventually is accepted for publication in the final destination journal. And this whole process can take months, sometimes years, unfortunately, before the science is actually released to the community in a published form. And so what preprints can do, and even when the research is released and published in a scientific journal, it can often be behind a paywall as well. And so that then reduces the impact of that research and the discoverability of that research across the world. So what preprint servers allow is they can speed up the sharing of scientific research, but also make it more open and a more equitable process. So for preprints, the same scientific manuscript that you would submit to a journal, you can submit to a preprint server like bioRxiv or medRxiv. And what we do at the preprint server is we take that manuscript through a screening process. Now, that's not peer review, but it's really just a process to check first the scope of the manuscript, the science falls within the scope of the service, so biological research or clinical research. And a key point is that we check that if the results turn out to be completely wrong, it's not going to be harmful to the public because preprints are completely openly available and free to read for anyone anywhere in the world. So those are two kind of key filtering points. And this whole process of screening usually takes 2, maybe 3 days, depending on the volume of submissions we're receiving. And then it's posted on our server for anyone to read, completely free. And at that point, the community can then give you feedback on the manuscript, can even review the manuscript, give you ideas for new future experiments. And that whole process can actually help to improve your manuscript before it gets finalized for publication in a journal as a version of record. So this whole process of submitting to a preprint server both increase the speed of the sharing of your research, but also can improve the manuscript itself. So I'm here to talk to you a little bit about bioRxiv and medRxiv, which are the two main preprint servers in the biomedical disciplines. bioRxiv was launched in 2013, so about 12 or so years ago, and it's intended for research manuscripts in the biological sciences. Up to now, we have around 300,000 manuscripts on the site, and we receive about 4,000 new manuscripts every month. I will tell you a little bit more about the screening process that we do later in the talk, but this involves affiliates who are all life sciences. Most of them are principal investigators running their own labs, and so they help us with that screening process. And because of the success that we had with bioRxiv, we then launched medRxiv in June 2019 for the health sciences. And on medRxiv now, we have around 72,000 manuscripts, which equates to about 1,500 new manuscripts every month. And just like on bioRxiv, we also have affiliates involved to help us with the screening process. But one difference there is that all of those affiliates are trained clinicians. So they give us input particularly on any treatment claims and any cases where we may want to have a little bit more caution. So you may be wondering, why are hundreds of thousands of authors across the world submitting their research to our preprint servers? Well, we asked our authors at the end of 2023 that exact question: why are they posting preprints? And what we found as the top answer, 81% of them are posting preprints to increase the awareness of their research. So as you can understand, because preprints are completely openly available, they're free for anyone to read, they're free for them to submit as well. This increases the impact of their research because it can be read by anyone, anywhere in the world. And so it's not hidden behind a paywall. And so we actually see millions of views on our site of the research that's on the preprint servers every month, millions of views. The second reason for authors to be posting preprints is to benefit the scientific enterprise. And this makes sense because by getting your research out quicker, you can help science progress faster. And we particularly saw this during the pandemic, where authors were submitting their research to us. We were getting it out within days. And that meant that we could really understand what the pandemic, the scale of the pandemic, what the disease was, what the manifestations of the disease were, what the sequence of the virus was. This then led to better treatments, vaccine generation very quickly, and preprints were really a key part of that process. But this also applies to non-pandemic research as well. The more that you can increase the dissemination of the research, the quicker you can get to treatments for various ailments. Another reason that authors are posting preprints is to stake a priority claim on their research. So what I will tell you later is that all preprints have a digital object identifier, which means that when you post your preprint on our servers, you will have a permanent identifier that you can then cite. And this has a date stamp associated with it. So that allows you to stake a priority claim to when you made that discovery. And that's something that you have control over, which comes to the next point and reason for why authors are posting preprints, is to control the timing of that dissemination of your research. And so you can control exactly when the community is aware of the research that you have done, helping you stake that priority claim. And this control over the dissemination of your research is particularly helpful because it allows you to cite your latest research in grant proposals, for example, which was one of the reasons authors are posting preprints, in a controllable manner. So if you submit to a journal and you have a grant deadline coming up in a few weeks, there is no way that you're going to be able to cite that research in that grant proposal. Whereas if you submit a preprint, within a few days, we will post it on the site, give you a citable DOI, and you can put that into your grant proposal. And as you'll hear later in my talk, there are a number of funding agencies that allow you to cite preprints in your grant proposal, and some are even mandating that you post preprints in the first place. And lastly, one of our top reasons why our authors are posting preprints is to receive feedback on their research. So as I said before, by disseminating the research openly, more members of the community can give you feedback than just those one or two or maybe three peer reviewers that see your research before it's published in a journal. In addition, in our survey, we asked our authors why they're specifically choosing bioRxiv and medRxiv for posting their preprints. More than 50% said that the reason was to increase because of the greater attention that their research gets on our servers. As I mentioned before, millions of people around the world are reading the content on our servers every month. I think it averages around sort of 5 or 6 million a month. In addition, more than 50% are posting with us because we're a nonprofit organization, so we're not connected to any commercial publishers, for example, and that's something that our authors value. But the greatest reason for posting on our servers is the ease and the speed of the submission process, which I will go through with you shortly. So why might you specifically want to post a preprint on bioRxiv and medRxiv? I thought I'd go into a little bit more detail on some of those reasons that you specifically might be interested in posting. So as I said before, staking a priority claim on the research is really important to a lot of our authors. And how we allow that is by providing that preprint DOI that gets associated with your research. And within that preprint DOI is a date stamp. And so that allows you to show exactly when your research was posted and discovered. And this can help you show productivity, because if you have a progress report coming up, or a grant application, like I said before, or even a job application, you're able to cite that research in those applications. And another way that you can show productivity is because you can post revisions of your preprint as well. And all of those have a date stamp as well. So if you post your first version and then you do subsequent experiments and update your manuscript, you can then submit a revision, which also has its own timestamp. And that allows you to show your productivity over time. And lastly, just in case you were wondering, once your manuscript is actually published by a journal, we will add the journal DOI also to your preprint page. So if anyone has, bookmarked your preprint and they come back to read it later, or it's linked in a blog post somewhere, readers will then see that your manuscript has been published in a journal, and they will be directed to that final version of record. So this can actually increase the amount of views and awareness of your published final version as well. Another reason you may be interested in posting preprints is that you can cite your preprints in many different ways. For example, you could cite your preprint in your other papers. So often when you're doing research, you make various discoveries that don't necessarily fit just into one paper. And so they get split across a couple of papers. But if you're only depending on the publishing process in a journal, you have no control over when that gets published, and you would be delayed in publishing your second paper if you needed to wait for the first paper to be published in order to cite it. Whereas if you submit a preprint, you can, once that's posted online and you have a DOI, you can then submit the second preprint a couple of days later, put the link to the previous paper, the DOI, in the second paper. Once that's posted, you can then submit a revision to your first preprint and add the DOI to the second paper. So all of that could happen within a week. So there isn't a lot of delay there, and it gives you a lot more control and ensures that scientists and researchers out there are aware of both of your papers and not just the one. It can also help you not scoop yourself as well, by allowing you to control when you put your papers out there, and don't end up reporting on something that you also have another paper of, and then they go through the different publishing processes at different journals at different times. So it really gives you control over how you're sharing your research and when. Other places where you can cite your preprints is in conference talks, so in the slides for your talks, and also in the posters. So we provide QR codes for your preprints, which you can put in your slides or on your poster, so that anyone who's coming to your talk or to your poster can then immediately learn more about your research, and hopefully cite it in their own research. As I mentioned before, you can also cite preprints in grant proposals. So these are just some examples from funding agencies that for a long time now have been saying that you can cite your preprints in grant proposals. And I put these old statements up here just to show how long funding agencies have been supporting preprints. And this makes sense because they are giving you money to make scientific discoveries, and they don't want them to be hidden behind paywalls. They want that research to have an impact. And so whatever ways that they can support preprints by allowing preprints to be cited in their own grant proposals, for example, is something that they've been interested in for a long time. And this also shows that these are funding agencies that are very global. Here we also have various European funding agencies as well as US on the previous slide, and Australian as well. And related to that, as I said, funding agencies want to encourage you to actually post preprints as well. And so many have preprint policies that encourage the posting of preprints of research that were funded by them. So here again, showing very global support from funding agencies. And there are also several that mandate preprints. So if you are funded by any of these agencies, you have to post preprints. So that's something also to be aware of. And there's more information here at the ASAP.bio website. Another reason you may be interested in posting preprints is to receive feedback to help you improve the work. And so we were interested in the percentage of our authors who are receiving feedback when they post preprints on our sites. And we found that 64% are receiving feedback by one means or another. And so of those 64%, 36% are receiving feedback by email, 32% from their colleagues who have read their preprints, 31% via Twitter, or now known as X, and 9% are receiving comments on our on-site commenting tool. And that I will just show you where you can find those comments and how you can make comments yourself on other people's preprints. So this is a preprint page on bioRxiv with the preprint on the left. And on the right here is this widget box that summarizes all the various engagement that is happening with preprints. And so at the top here is the comment area. And if you click on this link up here, it opens up a sidebar. And in here, you can see any comments that have been made on the current version or the previous version, because as I said before, you can submit revisions to preprints. And it also shows where you can write your own comments as well and submit those. And all of those comments are moderated by our team, so that we ensure that there are no ad hominem attacks or spam that are getting posted on your preprint. So all of those comments are moderated by us. And if you're interested in the commenting process and our guidelines, we have a QR code here that links to our blog post about commenting. So what has been interesting to see as preprints have grown in uptake and volume is that there's been a lot of community initiatives that have launched to support preprints and provide more benefits to the authors by providing feedback and reviews of their preprints. So here's just a few of those initiatives, one being Prelights, which was launched by the Company of Biologists, I think in 2017, I think. And this is an initiative that supports early career researchers in particular to write highlights of preprints and help to summarize in a way what that preprint is saying and what the importance of that preprint is. And they often ask the authors questions, and often the authors will respond to those questions as well. Pre-review, as Klaus mentioned at the beginning, was an organization that I co-founded, and pre-review is a scientist-led initiative to help early career researchers get exposed to peer review and help them get involved and learn how to do peer review. So pre-review provides resources to help early career researchers do peer review, but also provides a platform for those peer reviews and provides a DOI for those reviews as well. So you can put them in your CVs as well. And these are all linked from that preprint page, from that engagement widget, so that they're discoverable as well. Our ID is also another initiative that helps to recruit reviewers to provide feedback to preprints on the site. Review Commons is a author opt-in service where you as an author can submit to Review Commons, and they will initiate the review process. And those reviews are transferable reviews, which means that you can select a journal that they're partnered with to transfer the reviews to that journal. And those journals have all agreed to make a decision on your manuscript based on those reviews, rather than sending it out again and delaying the process by going through peer review again. If that journal does not accept the preprint, you as an author can choose another journal partner from their list and send those same reviews to that journal. So it really speeds up the process by creating these transferable reviews rather than having to reinitiate review every single time you submit to a journal. And it also helps with the reviewer pool because you're not asking multiple people to review the same manuscript like over and over again. So they're really helping to speed up that process. And you can also transfer those reviews to a non-partnered journal as well. That's also fine. And then ASAP Bio, you may be interested in, is a scientist-led organization and community of researchers who are advocating for preprints. And they have a lot of resources all about preprints. So I would highly recommend looking up their website. So as I mentioned, these are community review initiatives, and they are found in this widget here. So you click on community reviews, opens up the tab, and then we link to the reviews. So you can go and look at the reviews and see what the feedback was for that particular manuscript. If you're interested in preprints with community reviews, we have a QR code here that will link you to more preprints with reviews. So another reason you may be interested in posting preprints is that it can really speed up the transfer of your preprint to various journal partners. So if you submit to us, in that process, we ask you for the manuscript files, the author names, affiliations, title, abstract, all of those things. All the things that journals would also ask you for later. And so what we allow is by partnering with hundreds of different journals, once you've submitted to us, with one click, you can then just from a drop-down menu, select the journal you're interested in, click send, and we send everything to the journal. So you don't have to do that whole process again with the next journal or the journal after that or the journal after that. You can just with one click send it straight through. So that speeds up that whole process and means that you don't have to reformat everything for each individual journal. We also have the reverse partnerships set up, where if you submit to certain journals, during that submission process, you can select that you would like the journal to send the information to us, and then we will screen your manuscript and post it on the site. So lastly, here are just a few quotes from some of our affiliates that help us with the screening process, talking about how bioRxiv and medRxiv have helped them or their research teams by helping them grow their track record and be successful with grants and job applications and fellowships, and just really talking about the benefits of how preprints have really changed how we do research dissemination and make the whole process more equitable. So now just to talk about how you would actually go about submitting to bioRxiv and medRxiv, it's a very easy process, as our authors have said earlier. You go to the site and click on this submit area at the top, which takes you to this area where you click to submit. And all we really need as requirements for research papers is that the manuscript has a title, authors and affiliations, abstract has some results, that is very important for a research paper, and the references. So we don't have strict formatting requirements, we just need it to be a research manuscript within biological sciences or clinical sciences. And these are really the 5 very simple steps that we have for the submission process. You enter that metadata, so the title, abstract, and author information, the various declarations that we need you to make, in particular that all co-authors have agreed to the submission of the manuscript and that they've seen the manuscript. We need you to select a license for that manuscript, obviously upload all the associated files. And then a really important point here is to make sure that you view the PDF before you hit the submit button. And that is because there's a conversion process that the system does, and that can sometimes jiggle things around. So we want to make sure that your figures are not overlapping like page boundaries, or maybe you had transparency settings on your figures, which means they're all now black rather than a white background. So just make sure that you actually view your PDF before you submit, because that will save you a lot of time. This is just showing the file formats that we accept. Usual manuscript file formats, figures, and supplemental files we have a little bit more flexibility with. And here, just to go through that screening process for those who may be interested, when you submit your manuscript to us, we have a first-line screening team who are checking for scope, that it's biological sciences or clinical sciences for bioRxiv or medRxiv, checking that metadata to make sure that your abstract is in the abstract field and not in the title field. You're just making sure that everything is in the right place. And in terms of formatting, it's really just very simple things to make sure that it actually has an abstract and has titles and author lists and things in the PDF. And we don't care if your methods section is after your introduction or right at the end. That's completely up to you. For medRxiv, we have a few additional requirements. We check for identifying information, make sure that there's no pictures of patients, names of individuals, exact dates of operations, and things that could all be triangulated to identify the person. So we do have more stipulations there. So if that's included in the manuscript, we will return it to you to have those removed. We also look for ethical oversight statements to make sure that if a study needs ethical oversight, that there's a statement associated with that in the submission itself. If it's a clinical trial, we also require clinical trial registration. Once the manuscript has passed these screening steps, our affiliates then are involved in doing a final filtering step just to make sure that the submission is not pseudoscience. And as I mentioned before, that it's not going to be harmful to the public if the results are completely wrong. And for medRxiv, we get, as I said before, input on treatment claims and check that they're not going to be harmful in any way. So just a quick note on how to actually navigate the site, because you may not be ready to submit your research manuscript at present if it's not ready for dissemination. But you can use bioRxiv and medRxiv to read all the thousands of manuscripts that get posted every month. So this is the homepage, and up at the top there is a navigation bar. As I mentioned before, there's the submit button that you can click to submit a manuscript. Your FAQ, as the name suggests, is where you find answers to common queries. We have a blog post that talks about various new features that we develop and launch, and any general updates from us. There's an area where you can set up alerts and look at our RSS feeds so that you can get notifications when manuscripts are posted that are within your area of interest. We have a resources page where you can find out more about bioRxiv itself and medRxiv on medRxiv, and also links to other organizations that are doing interesting experiments around preprints. Our about page, as it suggests, is more information about the server. And we also have channels, institutional channels for preprints. And so these are areas where institutions have asked us to create a channel where they can add preprints from their institutions. So this is of interest to certain individuals. And then this is what a preprint page looks like. So the preprint is on the left here, and you can navigate to the full text of the manuscript to see everything there. More information. Well, firstly, you can search here for other manuscripts as well. Here's where that permanent DOI is located if you need to cite yours or other people's papers. And here is where there's more information about the submission, whether there's been revisions posted. You can navigate back and forth between them, and any other information about the authors themselves. Also metrics here if you're interested in how often it's being downloaded. Here is where you can actually access the PDF, and we have other options of display options. So where we pull the figures if they're uploaded separately and put them in line based on the full text display. So sometimes researchers are interested in seeing the figures next to where the text actually talks about them. So we have some other options that you may be interested in here, and then other associated files. And this is where you can share the preprints and also get that QR code that I mentioned about earlier. This is a feature that may be of interest, which allows you to get updates when something has changed about the preprint. So if there's a revision posted, for example, or if the manuscript is published, you can get a notification if you set that up through this feature here. And as I mentioned before, this is that engagement widget where you can view various blog posts that have been discussing the preprint, comments about it, reviews, and other associated discussions. So just lastly, this is a quote that we saw on social media saying the bioRxiv is just amazing, that it's led to a whole host of benefits for this particular person. And I'm just going to use this as a launch pad to summarize some of the things that I've said. So preprints really increase awareness of your research. As I said before, millions of views of the content every single month across the two servers. And this can really help you progress in your field by getting your research out quickly, getting more attention of your research, can really help you to advance your career, help you stake that priority claim to the research, and help you get job invitations, but also help you show your progress in your CVs as well. This can also lead to collaborations as more researchers around the world discover your research, and can lead to some peer review invitations as you are now known as an expert, because of the preprints that you're able to release and get more exposure for. It can also lead to co-submissions. We've heard about this a lot in the past, where a researcher will see a study that is similar to theirs, and they will contact them and say, let's co-submit to this journal. And it can also lead to journal invitations, because journal editors are looking on the preprint servers for interesting articles that they then solicit submissions for. So this was the end of that quote, essentially saying, you've really got to love this. So I'd just like to thank you all for your time and attention. If you have any further questions after this session, please feel free to email us and we will get back to you. And this is the websites for more information. And then just to thank the whole team that's involved, and people who past and present have given us a lot of input. So thank you all.